Good morning. Welcome to another edition of Take 5. It is Sunday, March 20th, 2011. I think I gave the wrong date yesterday, but anyway, here we are, and let's get right back into it. Matthew chapter 11, verse 7. As they went away, Jesus began to speak to the crowds concerning John. What did you go out into the wilderness to see? A reed shaken by the wind? What then did you go out to see? A man dressed in soft clothing? Behold, those who wear soft clothing are in kings' houses. What then did you go out to see? A prophet? Yes, I tell you, and more than a prophet. This is he of whom it is written, Behold, I send my messenger before your face, who will prepare your way before you. Truly I say to you, among those born of women, there has arisen no one greater than John the Baptist. We're going to start right there in the middle of verse 11. Don't think I've ever done that before. But we are going to talk about John the Baptist. And I got my daughters here with me, and if they want to stand up, I'll show them to you. But I'm pretty proud. There's one of them. Hey, Leela. And I got one upstairs and one over there if she shows up. But let's talk a little bit about John the Baptist. Are you going to show up in my Take 5 today? All right. So proud of these girls. But anyway, John, remember yesterday, John's disciples had come and asked Jesus, is this the guy? Are you the guy? I mean, we're not so sure. John wasn't so sure. He'd been put in prison and wasn't going so well for him. And Jesus says, absolutely. You look at all the miracles. You don't have to worry. You've got the right guy. And Jesus established his own credentials as the Messiah, the Son of God. Now, Jesus starts talking about his good friend and cousin John. And he says, he's talking to his own disciples. John's disciples have left. And he says, what kind of man is John? Interesting language here. He says, what did you go out into the wilderness to see? You know, people had to go out to see John. John and Jesus were similar in their message, but in their approach completely different. And that shows you there are many approaches that are okay. The message is the most important thing. But, you know, Jesus' approach was to go to the crowds and preach to them and get in with the people. John, he stayed out there in the wilderness, and the people came to him. So Jesus says, what did you go out there to see? Did you go out there to see a reed shaken by the wind? Boy, do we see plenty of that nowadays, don't we? Preachers that just move like this. Whichever way they think the crowd's going, they go the same way. They just kind of like, you know, a reed shaken by the wind. Kind of like a piece of driftwood on the sea. Just, you know, whichever way the current's going, that's the way they're going to go. They're not going to stand firm. No matter what hits it, they're firm. They know what they believe. They've got their convictions, and they preach it, and they stand on it. You don't see that much anymore. Very rare. That's the way John was. He said, "What?" He said, "Do you think that's what you were going to see? How about a man dressed in fine clothes?" Oh, we've got our share of preachers. They got the Armani suits. They got the Rolex watch. That's a $12 watch from Walmart, by the way. They got the jewelry. They look good. They got the big houses. He says, you want something like that, you got to go to a king's palace. That's not John. He wasn't in it for the money. What then did you go out to see? A prophet? He said, oh yeah. Not just a prophet. He said, this is the prophet who the other prophets prophesied about. This is the prophet that Isaiah said, behold, I'm sending a messenger before you who will prepare your way before me. The prophet's prophet, John the Baptist. John the Baptizer, really, better translation. John prepared the way for Jesus. John's message prepared the way for Jesus. After you heard John preach, and your heart was changed and you repented, you did what he said, you would be ready to receive Jesus' message because it was the same. John also got the crowds. Jesus didn't have to build a following too much, because when John shifted his ministry over to Jesus, when he said, look, that's the guy you need to follow, he already had thousands and thousands of disciples. And a whole bunch of them followed Jesus. So John got the crowd and he got their hearts right. But Look at what Jesus says here, and I know I'm going a little over. Probably the highest compliment you could give to anybody. And we're going to talk about it a little more tomorrow, but he says, among those born of women, there has arisen no one greater than John the Baptist. Jesus says, in my book, he's number one. The greatest man who ever lived. And I got to tell you, he is absolutely one of my personal mentors, one of my personal heroes. He's somebody I want to have his spirit as I do these take fives. I don't want to be a reed swayed by the wind. You're not going to see me in fine suits here on this broadcast. If the Word teaches it, I'm going to teach it. I'm going to stand. I'm not going to be like this. I really don't care what people think. I don't care about the popular opinion. I want to be like this man. Jesus says he was the greatest, and that's why he was the greatest. We're going to talk about it tomorrow. Come back for another edition. Today it was Take 6. Come back tomorrow for another edition of Take 5.